I made my third attempt at being self-employed. The first two failed. My wife said, "What if it doesn't work?" I said, "Then you and I and the kids will live in a car."
3 strikes and you're out.
First one failed quickly and painfully. The second one failed miserably.
John Klymshyn failed as an entrepreneur twice.
It was a true crash and burn. It cost me emotional unrest in my life. It cost me significant financial issues that stayed with us.
But on attempt number 3, he swung for the fences.
The goal was to book myself 30 times in the first year. The first 6 months, I was booked 45 times.
He was booked to do sales trainings in every major city in Canada, USA, and Mexico.
I will begin my 28th year in private practice.
But 28 years of success doesn't mean 28 years of peace.
I had a lot of dark nights of the soul, walking back and forth in the living room at 2 o'clock in the morning, wondering, how am I going to make this work?
What was your resistance of listening to your intuition?
Honestly, the size of the invoice.
I want to see where you're at now, because you told me about all your writings and everything. Like, you go by the title Coach K, and then take me back where you started and how you got here.
Well, it's a long journey because today's the 22nd of January. On the 1st of February of this year, I will begin my 28th year in private practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, on February 1st of 1999, I made my third attempt at being self-employed. The first two failed. First one failed quickly and painfully. The second one failed miserably and cost me a lot. It cost me emotional unrest in my life. It cost me significant financial issues that stayed with us. And I say us, my wife and I, for the better part of 3 years. It was a true crash and burn situation. The third time, on February 1st of 1999, I said that I wanted to try it again, and I had left a full-time job, and my wife said, "What if it doesn't work?" And I said, "Then you and I and the kids will live in a car." I absolutely committed to the fact that I was going to figure out how to make it work. So when I started, before you and I met, I was in the business of conducting sales training seminars, and I taught people that did very large transactions, like in commercial real estate, in high-end hospitality for meetings of thousands of people, as well as in the recruiting and search world, where it was not a one-call close. It was a relationship sell. It took multiple touches. And what I had done in my corporate life as a trainer and as a manager is that I had shared a way of thinking about the sales conversation that I trademarked, and I called it moving conversations forward. So when I started in 1999, my goal was, in the first 12 months, to book myself for half-day seminars around the country in one of those 3 vertical markets. The goal was to book myself 30 times in the first year. By the end of the first 6 months, I was booked 45 times.
Let's back up a bit. Tell me about, this was the third time you made the attempt. Tell me about the first 2 that failed.
First one, I didn't understand this concept called profit and loss. I was convinced that I was just going to make money. So I signed a lease on an office. I paid for printed materials. I bought a sophisticated phone system for me to use, just myself. And I drove from the house to the office on the second floor of a bank building on the boulevard in a beautiful part of the world called Palmdale, California. And I just didn't really have a sense of how I was going to do it. So unfortunately, I spent a lot of hours in that office staring at the phone, trying to figure out how it was going to work. The second time I got a job and put my tail between my legs. And
What was that business?
it was doing sales training.
Oh, okay.
But it really wasn't, because I wasn't successful at it.
When you can't sell your sales training, what does that say about the sales training? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then there's always been a thing in the back of my mind where the people say, those who can't do, teach, and those who can't teach, gym.
Yeah.
But I had some success in the staffing industry where I was managing people all day. And I really always saw myself more as someone that was in the business of collaborating and teaching, and in that order, because I find that adult learning tells us that if you cannot find a way to connect with people quickly, and I don't use that word often because I don't like, I'm going to send you a quick email or let's have a quick meeting. What that means is that you don't really have time to invest in it. If I'm going to be in front of salespeople of all different levels of experience, knowledge, talent, skill, ability to pay attention, I knew that I had to be able to connect with them first and have them feel as though I understood what they faced on a regular basis. Was I not as good a presenter? Did I not really write a business plan? Was I not effective at selling? Probably all of those. Because as I said, it lasted a few months and then it was over.
And then tell me about the second time. What was different?
What was different was I reached higher. I was going after national accounts and I took on a partner who started making commitments on my behalf that I was unaware of. And somehow, some way, some of those commitments were financial. And we had a huge opportunity with one of the biggest insurance companies on earth. They did an invitation only trade show for all of their sales representatives, and they did it in Massachusetts once a year. And I'm trying to remember the exact details. Somehow, some way, I had gotten in front of a couple of people that were part of that org. I had gotten very high marks, and they got us a table there. And about a week before we were going to go, when I kept asking my partner, who we never had a signed document, and again, it's very complicated, and you know how things go in the business world. Sometimes people are nefarious, and this guy was. And it was a week before, and I kept asking, okay, so because he was supposed to be the money guy, we got to have plane tickets, we got to have hotel rooms, we got to have preparation. And he vaporized, and I just got held holding the bag. I couldn't go to that event. That kicked us in the you know what. When I say us, I mean my name and my brand and my reputation. And a lot of the people that were expecting me to be there, it was just a very difficult thing to overcome. And at the same time, I had a lot of dark nights of the soul. I don't know if you, as a former entrepreneur, are familiar with the concept of dark nights of the soul.
What is that?
To me, it's up walking back and forth in the living room at 2:00 in the morning, wondering, how am I going to make this work?
Okay. I've had that. Yeah.
You have?
I like the
Shocking.
dark nights of the soul. I haven't heard that term, but I like it.
Because it truly tests what you believe, what you're willing to do, and where you might be able to find or begin to inhabit clarity around not only what you do, not only what your business is, but who you are, man. I am absolutely convinced that the reason that we have been able to stay in business for 28 years, and I say we because if my wife didn't support it and didn't go through the rough times with me, I probably would be working for someone else. I probably would be in conversations about retirement. Someone asks me, my physician a week ago Monday asked me, so you thinking about slowing down? I said, no. He said, you thinking about retiring? I said, no. He says, well, when do you think you'll retire? And I said, probably about 20 minutes before I fall over dead. Because I'm a creative individual. As you can see, I'm a musician. You know that I've written many books. I'm constantly looking for what is the next thing I can do. I have 3 books right now that you will probably see in the next year. One of them is called Open the Valve, The New Path to Creative Play. And that came out of a couple of different things, which I can talk about if you want me to. The second is a collection of short stories. And the third is a mystery comedy novel.
There's a point of operating from excitement and passion, and then there's a point of doing out of obligation. Do you see those two?
I think that's a great question. There's obligation impedes discipline. Obligation is an external thing. Discipline is an internal thing. Discipline is a choice. Obligation is, I have to do this because someone else wants me to, or I've made a promise that I'm having trouble living up to. I was fortunate enough to have not one, but 2 encounters with a very famous NFL football coach. And I quote him in my book on sales management. Way back when, he was the head coach of the Buffalo Bills when they went to the Super Bowl 4 times.
Wow.
And unfortunately, they didn't win any of those. So people joke that the area code for Buffalo is 044. But he's very well respected, brilliant guy. His name is Marv Levy. He's still, as far as I know, he's still alive. He's like 100 years old. But I sat next to him, not on one, but on 2 separate flights over the course of a couple of months. And I asked him what was the key to being a great coach. And he was generous enough to tell me. I asked him the question. He says, you got a pen? And I was like, okay, this is a coach, right? Here, I'm going to tell you something you should write down. And he gave me incredible advice that I was on my way to go teach how to coach to regional sales managers at Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts. We were flying to Chicago together. And he said, here are the three things that will make a great coach. Number one, get along with everybody, from the owner to the janitor. You don't have to be their friend. You have to get along with them. Second was, know the X's and O's. If you're not familiar with football, X's and O's are the representations of the players on the field and where they go and what their assignments are. Know the X's and O's better than anybody. And third, and I love this, never make a promise upon which you personally cannot deliver.
I like it.
He said, I recruit offensive linemen all year, and I will go and I will say to them, listen, we're going to have several offensive lineman opportunities next season. I would love to see you compete for one of those opportunities. He never said, I want you to be my left tackle.
The promise he can't deliver on.
That's it. Think about the reverberation of that. Think about how far that goes out into how we operate as people. If I take that as a personal kind of, not a mantra, but a corner of the frame of the way that I think about how I operate, someone said it to me yesterday, that's part of my operating system. They have their own internal operating system. I think that we all do. To say, listen, I'm never going to promise to someone something that I cannot personally deliver or guarantee. What that does is that reminds us of the true size of the world that we can impact. I'm sure you've heard of what the Navy SEALs call a 3-foot world.
No, what's that?
You haven't heard of this?
No.
Oh, cool. So the Navy SEALs, most of them, because they're a little either average or above average size, from the tip of their middle finger, which is the longest one for most humans, the tip of their middle finger back is about 3 feet.
Okay.
Anything beyond that, they can't control.
Wow. A 3-foot world. I like it.
They can impact it, and God knows that they do, but they can't control it. So they are wildly mindful of the fact, this is the universe that I can control. So I am going to be the best on earth at controlling that universe. The way that I think, the way that I take care of my body, the way that I take on my assignment, the way I contribute to completing the mission.
Like it. Okay. Tell me a bit, John, about the books that you've written and like the journey through writing, being an author.
I first started writing when I was very young, and what I found was that I was rewriting my favorite books. I did comparisons to my first couple of short stories, and it was like, okay, this is Arthur C. Clarke's short story. It just has my name on it.
Okay. Okay.
And I have notebooks, stacks and stacks of notebooks. I have stuff in I just found some lyrics in the piano bench over here, which you can see that.
Okay. Yeah.
I've always had this need, desire, thrill in taking a pen and paper and creating something. And what led to me getting a book published was it was a business book, and I'm incredibly proud of it. It's now 23 years old. It was about this process of moving the sale forward, and that was what we ended up with the title. And what happened was that I was speaking a lot. I was doing 40 presentations a year like an animal. I was flying 125,000 miles a year. This was back in the days when you stayed a bunch of nights in the same hotel. They would give you upgrades and luxury experiences and coupons for discounts and all that stuff. So what I realized was every presentation I do, I'm going to say at some point during it, I'm going to say, I hope this is speaking to you. I hope you find this useful, because my goal is that one of these days I'm going to be doing a presentation, and afterwards someone will walk up to me and say, I think what you're talking about is useful, and I know a publisher. I would like to connect you. And damned if that isn't exactly what happened. A friend of mine was running the USC, Southern California, the University of Southern California, the Fast Track Entrepreneurial Program, which was MBA candidates, MBA graduates, some were business owners. And it was, I think, 6 or 7 Wednesday nights that were 3 hours long that would walk people through what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And he was kind enough to invite me to come and talk to them about what it really means to sell. Now, Tom, you know that having a great idea is one thing, but being able to sell it is a totally different thing. Your experience with GripMat and what you did on Shark Tank, the thing that caught my attention, because what I used to watch Shark Tank strictly so I could grade the presentations. And I watched yours and I rewound it. My poor wife, I said, you got to watch this. You have to watch. She could care less, but I said, watch what he does here. Look how well prepared this dude is. Look how he's ready to answer every question with clarity and brevity. I think 90% of the people that go on Shark Tank, they're there for entertainment value because they can't answer a question clearly.
Yeah. That's the scary part.
So
Are you there to,
it's the scary part, but
what side of entertaining are you on?
exactly. All right. So I'm doing the Fast Track Entrepreneurial Program with the world famous, incredible marketing genius named John Haskell. John, he branded himself as Dr. Revenue. So I want to give him a shout out. I don't think he's practicing anymore. I think he's sitting in Santa Monica drinking wine on his off time, which is pretty much all day. But anyway, John is a great dude, was a huge influence on my life. And that's exactly what happened. I finished my presentation. Guy walks up to me. Turns out the guy lives in the town that I live in, which at the time was Valencia, California, about 60 miles south of Palmdale. And he says, you're not going to believe this, but I know a publisher, and he's always looking for authors. So I went and I sat with the guy. He ran his publishing business out of his home in Silver Lake, California. Name of his company was Silver Lake Publishing. And he sat there for 30 minutes telling me why sales books don't work and why business books don't work and why no one's ever going to make any money out of doing a book. And I said, let me tell you what, mine's going to be different. So he said, okay, listen, this is how it works. And we made an agreement. He said, I wouldn't presume to have an agreement on my desk when you first came, but if you're interested, I can send this to you and we can go forward. This is what ended up being my first book. This is a rarity. I believe they have a copy of this in the Smithsonian because there's only 5,000 of them on Earth.
Oh,
he printed 5,000 of them. I'm pretty sure I sold every single one of them. And I love going on eBay and Amazon and finding signed copies that people are trying to sell.
Oh,
it looks and feels like a college textbook, and I'm incredibly proud of it. And I walked around for a while thinking, wow, I did my book. I wrote my book. I'm done. And I was contacted by a guy who, oddly enough, at the time lived just 20 miles from where I'm standing right now. I moved from Southern California to Idaho 5.5 years ago. I was up here for some reason, and I went to go meet him. He had contacted me and asked me if I could, just to give you an idea how long ago it was. He says, I'm doing something called an internet radio show. In other words, a podcast.
okay.
But Apple had not branded the word podcast yet. So he was doing an internet radio show and he says, I love your book. I think it's so clear. It's so well written. And I'm like, oh, he's fanboying all over me. So I came to visit him in his office here in Boise. And I'm sitting in his office and he's at his desk. And behind him is 4 bookcases full of books on sales and marketing and business and entrepreneurship. And he says, this is one of the best books I ever read. And I'm like, all right, come on, dude. This is enough. And he asked me something, Tom. He asked me what I call a trajectory question. That what I mean by that is that the answer changed the trajectory of my creative life, my business life, my life in general. He said, what will your next book be about?
You thought you were done.
I worked hard on this, man. I thought everything I knew was in here. I thought everything I have to offer the world is now in this wonderful tome. I was flabbergasted. It turns out that he had done a handful of books, and I don't say that with any dismissal. The guy was a factory, and he had been successful selling these books. He had done books with John Wiley & Sons, one of the biggest publishers on earth. And he said, I would really like to introduce you to my publisher. What do you think you would want to write your next book about? I said, Dave, I don't know. He says, when you know, let me know and I'll introduce you. And I sat and I talked to my wife and I talked to clients and I talked to friends. And I realized that in my travels doing these sales training seminars, that I would always either go to lunch or go to dinner with the person that was leading those salespeople. And I would share with them the observations I made in the live sessions. And I would tell them, here's the thing, that person is not going to make it. That person is a rock star. That person isn't sure if they're in the right business. These people would sit there and, wait a minute, how much did you pull them aside? Did you know them before you got in the room? I said, no, I've developed an ability to read people. And here's the thing about sales. It is unforgiving. Sales is a performance profession. You have a quota. You either hit that quota or you don't. There's no discussion. You miss quota 3 times. I don't care if it's a week, a month, or a quarter. We got to talk about whether or not this is for you. And as soon as we have that conversation, you've pretty much already decided, right?
Yeah.
So I realized that who I was spending time with were people that were managing sales teams. And I called Dave and I said, I would like to write a book on how to manage sales teams. He says, John, there are hardly any out there. You've got a market sitting and waiting. So he introduced me to a gentleman named Matt Holt, and I talked and we emailed back and forth, and I put together a 12-page proposal based on Dave's guidance. And this was the shining moment of just euphoria, they sent me a package with a contract, with a stipulation in there that once I signed the contract, they would send me a check for me to write the book. Everything I had done up to then, including this, was I'll write it and then we'll sell it together. John Wiley and Sons is in the business of funding the authorship of books. And that, listen, talk about a dream come true. I'm going to get paid to do something I love to do.
Right.
And once I completed that, we did a reasonably successful launch. We sold out the first printing. We sold out in 3 months, which is a big deal. 7,500 copies. We promoted it by placing it in Hudson's bookstores and airports all over North America. Yeah.
Because they're going to be traveling.
The thing,
smart.
Exactly. And the thing about bookstores in the airports is they don't care if your book sells or not. You pay them to place it on the shelf.
Okay.
You pay them whether it's going to be spine out, cover out, on the shelf, in the window, on an end cap, at the register. They're all different numbers.
Okay.
Because it's real estate, like you said.
Yeah.
People are walking through. I've had people reach out to me from the Netherlands, from Argentina. What that question did was it says, geez, that's right. I haven't written any fiction since I was in my 20s. I was busy raising a family and bopping all over North America. Over the course of the first 9 years of us being in business, as I said, I was doing multiple presentations a year. And I sat down one afternoon and I thought, okay, what cities have I spoken in? And I wrote down the name of every city that I had done a gig in. And I realized I had spoken in every major city in the United States, every major city in Canada, and the major city, as far as I know, in Mexico. I spoke in Mexico City. I also spoke in Cabo San Lucas, in Cancun. I wrote the first 3 chapters of this book when I was at a gig, a 3-day gig where I only spoke for 1 hour for a travel group. I sat on the balcony in a resort in Cancun writing 3 chapters of this book, which did not suck.
Amazing.
But after speaking in every major city and many of the secondary cities, I was like, okay, where's that idea for a sitcom that I wrote down? Where's that story I was working on? And I started pulling stuff out. And since Dave asked me that question, and God rest his soul, Dave passed away 2 years ago. Since he asked me that question, I am now about to complete my 12th book with the 13th and 14th right behind it.
Wow. Awesome.
So you asked me about the process. The books, I've come at it a couple of different ways. One of them was, okay, you have an assignment, write this book. And those are the business books. The second one was on sales management. The third has a very controversial title. It's called How to Sell Without Being a Jerk.
I love it.
And it was a revisit of this stuff, but it was also things I had learned over training a whole bunch of people and coaching a whole bunch of people. And you asked me, how did I get to where I am? My coaching practice was invented on a break in doing a sales training session with commercial real estate brokers. I will always credit a gentleman named Phil Meany. He came to me on a break and he said, this is great material. If any of my people do any of the stuff you're talking about, they're going to do well. What do I do after you leave? And me being a mercenary capitalist, I said, you bring me back in 30 days.
Pay me again.
And he did. Yeah. But I said, what we'll do is I'll sit with your folks and I'll talk to them about how to put this into practice. Some of them will actually make live calls in front of me. Some of them will bring deals that they're working on. Some of them will talk about who they want to attract as clients. And we'll do some strategy one-on-one. He brought me back every couple of months for 2.5 years.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden I have an additional product to offer. So I'm up and I'm doing presentations in front of people moving at the speed of light. And I said, if any of you might be interested in having the discussion, I also do a fair amount of coaching work. I never thought to pursue it, but I offered it. And as you were struggling with how to pronounce my last name when we first got on, people just started calling me Coach K. And several people have said, aren't you worried about the guy who's the winningest coach in college basketball? Aren't you worried about him having a problem with that? I said, it would be the greatest thing for my brand for him to sue me.
To have a problem. Yeah.
Absolutely. Come on with it, Shasha. I'm ready. Let's go to the Supreme Court together.
That's funny. So your journey of basically 12, going to be at 14 books. What has been the hardest part as an author for you?
There are 2 separate things about books. One is sitting down and writing it. And under that, the 3 bullet points under it, as far as what are the hardest things, first hardest is beginning. Second hardest is finishing. because creative people are like, oh, I can make it better. I can make it better. I can make it better. Okay, it's 5 years later. And then the third hardest thing is maintaining a consistent voice throughout. So there's writing the book, and then there's selling the book. And I learned very painfully with this one that I was not prepared to sell the book. I thought, I wrote a book. People are going to line up at the front door. Are you kidding? Bookstores are going to be saying, send us 50 more copies. I'm like, God, this guy's a genius.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out that way.
Yeah.
So
what author do you really look up to?
for fiction, John Irving, Ken Follett, and this amazing fiction writer named Anthony Doerr. Anthony wrote All the Light We Cannot See, and he wrote Cloud Cuckoo Land, which my daughter-in-law is a voracious reader, has been most of her life. I introduced her to the book Cloud Cuckoo Land, fell in love with it. She said she read it twice in a row, and it is her, by far, by a significant margin, her favorite fiction she's ever read. She told her father about it. Her father is a very accomplished artist, and he created a brand new cover for her copy of the book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So for fiction, that's John Irving. The first gift I ever gave to my wife while we were dating, it was, I'm only laughing because I remember the look on her face. I showed up at her condo because it was her birthday. I showed up with a box that was wrapped with a ribbon on it. And she was, you bought me something? You bought me a gift? She opens it up. It was a copy of The World According to Garp by John Irving. And she goes, a book? This is who I am. I love this book. I want you to love this book too.
Have you heard of Eckhart Tolle?
I've heard of him. Honestly, man, I've never read any of his work. People have quoted him to me and told me how powerful his stuff is. I've just never gotten around to it.
Okay.
Do you want to see the stack of books that I'm working through?
Yeah, show me.
That I'm reading?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. How many do you read at once?
When you say at once, see, I will read a minimum of 3 books, but this is the group I'm working through right now. So a business book called Buy Back Your Time by a guy named Dan Martell.
I think I've heard
That was given to me as a gift. This is a mythology, timeless heroes, timeless stories of gods and heroes, because I cannot stand the fact that when they ask about some sort of mythology on Jeopardy, and I don't know the answer, drives me nuts. Next is what's called a devotional by a guy named Oswald Chambers. It's called My Utmost for His Highest, and it is a daily reading. It's about that long. It's probably about 2 minutes of reading. And I'm rereading for probably the 5th time, something that I'm sure you would dig. Have you read this?
I have not. You're not the first person to suggest that, so I'm going to write
This
that
is
one
the
down.
Barnes & Noble version, so it cost me, what was it, $14? Not even, probably. Where's $8.95 US.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. The Tao is philosophy, creativity, connection to nature, all this stuff. It's ancient wisdom, and it's written in koans. So it's these mystical, kind of confusing, really deep, sometimes I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Little. And one of my favorites is
Eckhart Tolle.
Heaven's. Yeah. Okay. All right. One of my favorites is Heaven's net is vast. It is loose, yet nothing slips through.
Interesting.
It's cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
Talks about the sage, meaning the wise, experienced person. And it uses it both in the male and the female. It talks about running teams, running groups, running countries, running societies. Not that I have any desire to do any of those. I want to run my own life and be useful to people and be able to sleep at night.
John, through your entrepreneurial journey, through your journey as a author, so I guess, and as an artist, tell me a story about when you used your intuition.
I thought about that a couple of different times. I had an epiphany yesterday. The first time, reaching way back into my personal history, the first time I followed my intuition was I was 18 years old. And I had been playing drums since I was 9. I had moved out of my parents' house and gotten a full-time job and moved in with a bunch of lunatic musicians, thinking I was going to live the bohemian lifestyle.
You had a proud father.
He wasn't too happy about that. And he was much happier when I quit musicianship for a full-time gig and joined the Navy, but that's a whole other story. Back then, there were these newspapers. I grew up on Long Island, outside of New York City. And there was a wildly vibrant live music scene at this point in time. It was the late 70s. And I'm thinking, okay, I got to audition. I got to carry my drums around. I got to audition. And I come across this ad for not a drummer, but a lead singer for what is still called progressive music, progressive rock music. So back then there were these bands called Klymshyn, Genesis, Gentle Giant, Jethro Tull, and it was like, why would I audition to be a lead singer? You know what? I probably won't get it, but what the hell? I remember distinctly driving to where this audition was, parking my car across the street, and listen. The garage door was open about that much. And the band was playing inside. And it sounded good. And I remember hesitating, thinking, I don't know if I want to do this. And then something in my head said, you have nothing to lose and you love to sing. If it doesn't work out, you'll never see these guys again. Yesterday, when I was thinking about this, I realized that was the moment that I began my journey as a risk taker. And I've been a risk taker ever since. It was a risk to join the Navy at 20. Most guys were younger, at least enlisted men were younger. It was a risk to leave everyone I knew and everyone that I had a relationship with in New York to go join the Navy and hopefully see the world. But going back to me sitting in Oceanside, New York, in my car, I had a Chevy Impala. It was a land yacht, but I opened the door and I walked up that driveway and I banged on the garage door. We talked for a couple of minutes. They had told me 3 songs that they wanted to hear me sing to audition with. Did all 3. And the drummer and the bass player and the guitarist and the keyboard player, they're looking around and looking at each other with their eyes. And they said, you want to go through those again? I was like, sure. And we sang, I did all 3 of them again. And the bass player says, all right, do you want to join our band?
Nice.
I had no intention of being a lead singer. I was a drummer who could sing. Like I said to you earlier, I'm a singer who plays guitar. My first love and I still have a very expensive multi-piece drum set. I keep pointing to it's in the garage. It's just I don't have a place to set it up here because it'll deafen the neighborhood. But that moment of following my intuition to say, take this risk, number 1, because it could be fun. Number 2, because you're reasonably good at this. Number 3, you have nothing to lose.
Is there a point in your life when a risk came about and you felt like you had something to lose?
Yeah, and it happened about 9 months ago. And I did not follow my intuition, and it bit me in the ass. See, it's interesting that you want to talk to people about intuition or you want to hear about intuition, because I have a very distinct view of what it means to follow our intuition. And there's a dividing line as far as male and female. Here's what I think, and you can do with this what you like. I'm convinced that women's intuition is fully formed and reliable sometime between when they are 16 to 18 years old. Fully formed and reliable. And they get it, and their intuition is correct. For men, happens when we're about 40.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Now, the thing that's in common is that once your intuition is fully formed and correct and reliable, when you go against it, it will bite you in the ass. We all have heard stories of women who get into relationships that they know they shouldn't be in. It's against their intuition, and it ends up not ending. It could be minor, it could be major, but we see that. With men, it's what we do, what we pursue, what we involve ourselves in, that it takes us, because we've basically got a head full of cement, it takes us a while for that stuff to start to sink in. And I will tell you that every time since I turned 40, which is 26 years ago, every time since I've turned 40 that I have gone against my intuition, it has hurt me. And most recently, it hurt me emotionally and financially. I knew that I should prepare for the end of this particular business relationship. I knew I should be looking for something to replace it, but no, they'll stick with me. Come on, it's working out. It's doing well. The founder and owner and the CEO of a $100 million a year company was giving me signals that he didn't really want to change. He didn't really want to get involved in thinking differently about managing his people. His 3 direct reports, they were eating this stuff with a fork, that no pun intended, it was a restaurant business. But they were like, this is exactly what we need. This is going to take us to 200 million. We're going to have 25 restaurants. The founder, who was the key decision maker, was not on board. And I knew it, but I kept avoiding replacing that revenue. And it was a significant dip. It was like turbulence at 35,000 feet, man, when all of a sudden the plane goes down about 10 feet. Everybody feels it.
What was your resistance of listening to your intuition?
Honestly, the size of the invoice.
Okay.
It was a significant fee. I have earned that fee with other clients, and I was convinced that they were going to sign on for another full year. Sent the document, waited every day to see the DocuSign document come back signed, and got a very gaping silence from the ultimate decision maker.
Then an email that says, "Thank you for the last year has been amazing, but we're going to have to reconsider." One of those.
Sorry to inform you.
That's hard.
Listen, you live and you learn. Hope to God you live and you learn. So what the lesson that I learned at this season of life that I'm in is that as a self-employed person, I must always be on the hunt. Always. You and I talked right around the time that I was either going on or just came off of sabbatical last year.
Yeah.
Okay. First time I've ever taken any extended time off. And I came out of that time off about a week or two later with profound clarity around how I wanted to spend my time in my business day. And I boiled it down to three things. If what I'm doing during what I consider to be my business day, and Tom, I don't work 40 hours a week. The whole reason I went into business for myself was to engage in and welcome and enjoy freedom. My boat is called Sweet Freedom. And I have good clients who pay on time and pay a fair rate, which provides me with a good living. And I love the work that I do. And what I came out of that sabbatical with was the three activities during my business day, however many hours a day that might be on any given day, is I need to be involved in, every day I need to be involved in some business development activity. Every day I need to be involved in promoting my work. Hey, everybody, I have a bunch of books you should read. And then the third thing is delivering quality work for my current clients.
And what's your expectation of hours per week or day?
It depends on the day. Fridays, I work for maybe about 2 hours. I'm not big on working on Fridays. Monday through Thursday, work at the desk, focused in it, maybe 5 hours a day. And I'm at it at 6:30 in the morning. So come lunchtime, pretty much done for the day. Because I'm very disciplined, because I plan every day, because I am proactive with all of my clients, because I'm conscious of what is it that I offer? Why is it valuable? I was on another podcast very recently with this really bright dude, almost as smart as you, Tom.
He's smarter. I don't know who he is, but
you don't know
he
what this
doesn't
guy's
look
created. I'll tell
smarter.
you what.
He doesn't look smarter, but he's definitely smarter.
No, that's exactly right. He's not operating from Portugal. He asked me, what is the ultimate thing? What's the total boiled down description of what you do? And it was great because it came out in a excited utterance. What I did was I said, I help people inhabit clarity.
I like it. And you're
working for me.
That's reflecting in your schedule.
It's reflected in my schedule. It's reflected in my work. It's the business writing that I do. It's about let's see how we can remove all of the distractions, all of the additional things that you're doing that you think might help your business grow. And let's remove them. Let's get clarity around the language that you use with the people that work for you. Let's get clarity around the language that you use to vision out where you're going to take your company. Let's get very clear with the language that you're going to use when you are out in front of any audience at all, whether it's prospects or clients or speaking at conventions or getting hired to speak. Because when you and I first met, and you were on my podcast, I was talking to you about the fact that my deep passion is the intersection between language and music.
Do you feel that you'll shift more into that?
I have over the last several years. People ask me, what do you do? I help your people examine the language that they use so that they can become masters at crafting inspirational language.
I like that. Awesome.
I use the analogy of the medieval system: apprentice, journeyman, master. The apprentice is there to learn, watch, listen, go get raw materials, maybe make one part of what we're building. The journeyman is supervising the work of apprentices while working on a very high quality product, whatever it might be. I always use the analogy of building tables. People think building tables is a lot easier than it is. Not easy. So let's pretend that you're going to be a fine, finished carpenter making high quality tables. Every interaction, every connection, every edge, you're looking for the best it can possibly be so that it'll last, it'll serve the function, it'll be aesthetically pleasing. And the apprentice moves from cutting the raw wood for what the journeyman will do with the lathe or with carving or whatever, and then every so often gets to participate in that. And what the master does is answer questions, make minor corrections, and watch.
So are you still getting raw materials or are you watching?
I get a lot of raw materials because people say, I have this article I'd like you to look at for me. And I pull out the editor's pen, man. I love editing. I love people bringing me raw product. Here's my 7,000 word article. Okay, we're going to get it down to 1,200 and we're going to be very clear in what the message is.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, I could tell that these 3 paragraphs were written by AI.
I see what you're saying of like how important it is of understanding the clarity of what someone's doing and then also putting that into a book. Because being very clear on the direction of your book is so important.
This was a pivotal book for me. Number one, because it sells consistently. It's still selling every week, every month, which is thrilling. The other is that I approached this with a very specific mindset. And the mindset was, we're not going to say, here's what you should do. It's not going to be an instructional book. It's going to be a guidebook. So that's where the word guide came from. And what I did was, as a creative, I thought, okay, what the greatest teacher that has ever walked on earth taught everything that he taught by telling parables. There once was a man. Now, you've heard stories that begin that way, right?
Examples. Yeah.
Okay. And as soon as you hear that, what do you think?
Remember a story. You relate it to yourself.
You think, I know that dude.
Yeah.
I've seen that dude.
Oh
Oh no,
that's me.
he's talking about me.
Yeah.
So what I did was I said, okay, we're not going to make an instructional tool. We're going to give people a guide. And what's the greatest guide? Let's look at who is really good at this. And let's examine how they think, how they speak, how they operate, how they walk. So I created a mythical creature called the Ultimate Sales Manager.
Okay.
The Ultimate Sales Manager has a great heart for their people, prepares for every sales meeting. She ends every sales meeting early so she can give people back their time. She remembers what's important to every single person because people's motivations change over time. So the Ultimate Sales Manager has key things that they think about, offer, the way they operate, and what people can expect from them. And what we did over the course of writing the book, and when I say we, it's because I got 18 people that are quoted in this book. And those 18 people are wildly successful at running sales teams. And what we did was we said, there are certain attributes of this mythical creature. And we came up with 52 of them.
Wow.
So at the end of the book, you can read 1 a week. And in 3 months, you're much more effective. In 6 months, you're running a very good team because you've gotten rid of the dead weight. And I hate to sound mercenary and dispassionate, but I've yet to come across a sales team on earth that does not have someone who is underperforming. And the reason they're underperforming is because they're still there and they're in the wrong job, but the sales manager hasn't recognized it or done anything about it.
Why? Like avoidance of conflict or unawareness?
Hoping that it's going to work. They're hoping they're going to be able to fix them. They're hoping that just one more quarter and it'll all start to click.
Yeah.
No.
My problem with GritMat was, you know, those football movies where they take all the misfit kids and put them together and they leverage their like misfit powers to work together. That's what I wanted for GritMat, where that's not how sales teams work. You got to pick the best quarterback for your team. You can't take a kid off the street and try to train him to be the best quarterback. It was actually rooted in more of a scarcity mindset where I didn't think I was able to get the best quarterback. So I'm just, anyone want to be a quarterback? First one says yes. Yep, you're in.
And how did that work out for you?
Terrible. I did get some good quarterbacks at times. There was some great people that I worked with, but out of everyone I hired, it was just like, it was rough. There's I would say 2 for sure, very proud I worked with. 3, maybe 4, but after that I was like, Jesus Christ. But that was, I can sit here and say negative things about them, but I was not doing my part as, I guess you could say, as a sales manager. There was a little more dynamic than just a sales manager. I was dealing with the whole company, but I was definitely not leading properly. I was not leading with clarity. Like what you're talking about with speaking clarity is so important. That's important for anything. I'm studying how to have a YouTube channel and like being very clear on the direction that you're going, clear on YouTube, writing a book, teams, like all of that is very important.
The wrestling match over what the title should be is, okay, no, honestly, what do you want to write about? I want to write about building and fixing broken sales teams. That's a horrible title. Give us something better. What you're talking about, what's cool is that this has been adopted by people that don't run sales teams. I was hired by a chief technology officer that was at a $3 billion chemical company out of Dallas. And she had 17 IT managers. Every one of those 17 people had 10 to 15 people reporting to them. And she said, can you come in and talk about the concepts in this book without talking about sales? And I said, yes. After she read it and after the session, she said, this is a leadership book wrapped in sales management clothing. And I thought, that's fantastic. So she had her team identify the lowest performers across the entire global platform. They had 4 people that traveled to Indonesia as part of their work. So there were a whole bunch of humans doing this stuff. And they embraced the idea that we need to, when we identify C-level, there's A players, B players, C players. Once we identify, and don't get emotional about who the C players are, we need to either get them to move up to being a B or move out of the org. She came back to me a year later. She says, you have saved us over $1 million in salaries inside a year.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that.
I said, do you hear? That's the sound of my fee going up.
That's amazing. Tell me a little snapshot in your brain that happens of the concept of clarity. When you're reading let's just talk about you're wanting to edit a book, like the first 7,000 words, you cut it down to 1,200 words. What is going through your mind of the concept of clarity?
I'll tell you some of my beliefs about writing that apply to editing. Number 1, writing is done for the reader, not for the writer. I love writing because I hope that someone is going to come across what I have written and do this. When I go to a bookstore and I'm interested in a book, I will pull it off the shelf and I will flip to a random page and start reading. If I'm still reading 3 pages later, I buy that book. If I'm not, it goes back on the shelf.
Where do you start? Just first page?
Random. No, never the first page.
Oh.
No. Because the first page, I would tell you that in most books, the first page is probably written halfway to 90% toward the end of the process of writing, because what you do is you go back and say, okay, how do I want to introduce people to this? Here's what I learned in writing this one, the first one, from my editor, a woman who is still an editor and is a representative of authors. Her name is Kristen Loberg. I was talking to her about, I'm really struggling with getting some clarity around this. And she says, John, you're never going to write a book from the first word of the first page all the way through to the last word of the last page. Whatever is on your mind today, write about that. We'll assemble it later.
Yeah.
But you have key concepts that you want to get across to people. So when I'm writing fiction, it's what is the environment I want to create? Who are the characters? Where's the conflict? Do I want to offer resolution? Now, that's a key thing in writing fiction, because when you don't offer resolution, people are furious. But, and this is the wonderful thing about doing that, they tell everybody they know. And they're like, oh, I want to read that. So writing is done for the reader, not for the writer. Number 1. Number 2, the writer should be invisible in their work. It means I don't want to read something and think about who wrote it or where they were when they wrote it or what their life is like. I want to read it because it's becoming part of my, what I call growth sphere. I'm not sure if you and I talked about this before. In most business environments, you hear people talk about getting to the next level, or I want to go ahead and level up. I want to take the next step in my career. All of that imagery is a very clear staircase, right? None of us take the same path. None of us are on the same staircase. I don't believe in using that sort of language. The language that I use when we talk about growth is, what is the sphere that represents who you are as a whole? We have these things that I call circles of thought. One circle of thought is how I'm going to spend my vacation. Another circle of thought is, what will my next conversation with the important people in my life be? Another circle of thought is, how do I build a practice, being selfish, how do I build a practice where I love what I do, I get paid well, and I have inordinate freedom? So all of those circles are constantly spinning because our mind has, 17,000 to 152,000 ideas a day. We're taking in impressions, we're hearing sounds, we're walking through memories. So all of these circles of thought are spinning, and they come together to form a sphere. And everything that we learn, everything we experience, everything we add expands the sphere in every direction at once, and the sphere never contracts again.
So you said that when you're writing, writers should not be seen. And then you're writing
The
to
writer should
expand
be
that
invisible to
sphere.
the reader, unless it's a biography.
Okay.
If it's a biography, that's one thing. Here's the thing. The third time you begin a sentence with the word I, your reader loses interest, because what you're writing is not about them, and it's not for them. You think it's for them. It's not. It's about you promoting yourself or feeding your ego. When I read Cloud Cuckoo Land, the only time I thought about the author was when I closed it, because I saw his name there. I was so entrenched in that world that he creates. Another favorite book of mine that maybe you want to explore is way off the map of what we've discussed, which was another thing that I've added to my sphere. I've read it 3 times and I've given copies away. I've recommended it multiple times. It's called Proust Was a Neuroscientist.
So I guess when you're saying fiction and nonfiction, when you're talking about the sales manager book, you had an avatar. Are you considering this fiction?
I'm considering it a very creative way to get business concepts across.
But I guess what I'm trying to get to.
No, because what I did was when I would talk about these attributes, I would quote people who had done that, who had believed in that process. And they talk about, this is why we were able to hire. One of them was a guy named Ed Friedman, who ran a significant commercial real estate brokerage in Manhattan. And you want to talk about a competitive environment, get into commercial real estate in Manhattan. His office was at 125 Park Avenue. You could see Grand Central Station out of his window. And he talks about hiring people that are swans. They're smart, they work hard, they are accessible, and they're nice. Wait a minute, these are commercial real estate brokers. This is a dog-eat-dog world. It is cutthroat, almost literally. He wanted people that were smart, that would work hard, that were accessible, and they were just nice, because he wanted to rebrand what his company was known for in Manhattan. And wow, amazing. Next thing, he's making a deal with a company out of England to merge his company with theirs. And all of a sudden, he's got a global platform. So writing is done for the reader, not for the writer. And I've heard so many different quotes about writing. One of them was from a sitcom, but I don't think it was the sitcom character that said it first. He said he was struggling with getting a book done. And his roommate was trying to do everything he could to help him get there. And he says, no, you don't understand. This is a solitary effort. I have to be left alone. I have to be uninterrupted. And the character says to him, but that doesn't sound like fun. He says, it's not fun. He said, I hate writing, but love having written.
Interesting.
People say they hate working out, but boy, they love how they feel when they're done.
Yeah, true.
It's a wrestling match. It's an emotional and psychological wrestling match to say, focus on this. Take another thing. One of my key mantras is remove unnecessary words. Read what you've written out loud and see how long it takes for you to get to the point.
I like that. So, John, if you could talk to yourself back when you were just about to enter that garage that you were singing, what would you tell yourself about clarity?
That you made the decision to drive all the way out here. Give it your best shot. Don't think about whether or not they like you or appreciate you. Sing your heart out. Singing is a technically difficult thing to do. It's an emotional exposition, and it is high-flying risk. And what I would say was, remember that in everything you choose to do between now and whenever you're taken away from this earth.
Where do you think clarity and intuition overlap?
When we have an important decision to make, we will go to our trusted advisors, whether those are people that are just the tip of that 3-foot world, or people that we've known for some time that we trust and respect. Over the years, I have learned that I want my circle of friends, my circle of contacts, to only be people that I trust and respect. It's just, tick-tock, man. I don't know how long I'm going to be around. So where do clarity and intuition overlap? I think that when you embrace any intuitive sense, that's the moment of clarity.
Yeah.
We burden it with, and it can also, or maybe we should, or only if I had. None of those statements maintain the environment of clarity.
Yeah. Something I heard is your intuition will speak in statements. Your anxiety will speak in question.
I've got another one for you from the British comedian Jimmy Carr. He said, here's the thing. All we have is right now. Anxiety is depression is worrying about the past. Anxiety is worrying about the future. And neither of them are here.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what's so critical, the idea of listening to your intuition, because it only happens in the present.
I like the concept of listening to it. I'm much more interested in responding to it. Your next step, your next choice, your next decision, your next action, they come from your intuition.
With Shark Tank, there was a lot of pressure before. I basically had this panic attack. And I had a friend who told me that I was going through imposter syndrome. I was like crying the day before, like freaking out. And we did a practice pitch without the sharks, and I completely bombed it. My producer was asking me if I was religious and if I pray. She's trying to get me to come down. Afterwards, my friend told me about imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, yeah, it makes sense. He explained it's all successful people have imposter syndrome. This is a symptom that you're going through. It just made sense, and it helped calm down my anxiety. It was very clear of why I was there. And I had this, it was such a huge goal of mine. I'm going to swing for the fences because this is why I came here. I'm not gonna crack over a pitch or a question. The chaos before was there, but when the time came, it was like we're fully focused. And that clarity is there. The chaos is muted. Almost like the eye of the tiger. You're fully laser focused.
We call that being in flow.
Yeah. Yeah, I get flow. I feel flow when I'm in like being like creating. But this is...
We're creating though. Because no matter how much you prepared, you did not memorize exactly what was going to come out of your mouth.
Yeah.
This is why preparation is so important. As a musician, I have yet to play any piece perfectly, ever. I've been prepared in case things go sideways.
Yeah.
Because I have practiced in advance. And when the moment hits, there's no going back. That's the beauty of it. Are you much of a movie guy?
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about Albert Brooks?
Not my favorite, but how do you feel?
Okay. His stroke of genius, in my mind, is a movie called Defending Your Life. It's very early in Meryl Streep's career. There's a guy named Rip Torn who's in it, and an actress that was very popular in the 70s named Lee Grant. And the concept is that when you die, you go to some place where everything is perfect. It's 71 degrees all day. Every bite of food is fantastic. You sleep beautifully. But during the day, you have to sit and you have to have someone help you defend your life. And the whole concept is, did you face your fears? And they show scenes from his life where he had to face his fears. And one of them was his first time to speak in front of a very big, very influential audience. And I got to tell you, how he portrays that. And just with no words, the scene where he is up in front of that audience and the lights are on him, it was a critical moment for him. So it's one of my favorite movies. I watch it at least once a year. And it's beautifully done. It's very subtle. Some of the humor is just, he's a very good physical comedian, so he gets to use that. And he's a very bright, sarcastic writer. And it's about, Meryl Streep is a character that had this amazing life. She was this saint upon saints on earth. And he was a struggling, boy, I wish I could make it good person. And just how they find each other. And it's a beautiful story. But if you watch the movie, and I hope that you do, once you see the scene where he has the speech, man, you got to text me so we can talk about it.
I'll see if we can find it on Netflix. Awesome.
Okay. If it's on Netflix, it's on Amazon, but I don't, maybe
Amazon.
You only live on Netflix.
So
Okay.
I think we got Amazon too.
I'll tell you what, when you're somewhere where you have a DVD player, I will ship you the DVD.
I'm sure my girlfriend's a tech whiz. So sorry, my now fiance, we just got engaged. So
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Look
thank
at you growing up to be an adult.
yeah, I know.
Wow.
One day I'll grow up to be an adult.
I'm very happy for you to make this decision and commitment. I made it many years ago, and it is one of the greatest things. I say one of the greatest things because Terry and I have produced 2 adult functioning humans that are out in the world making a contribution. We're very proud of that. And I will tell you something that I believe in the depth of everything I believe, that there is nothing as good for the soul of a man than the love of a good woman.
Thank you, John. So John, people that are listening, how can they find you?
Very easy. LinkedIn is the most direct way. Well, electronically, I'm more than happy to have people email me if they like. It's, as they can see on the screen, it's very simple, john@klymshyn.com. I'm happy to have anyone email me and ask me questions or see if there's a way that I might be able to serve them in their pursuit of clarity.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much for your time.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Loved it. Thank you so much. You did it. You stayed all the way to the end. Thank you so much. If this episode gave you something real, join our community by hitting subscribe. And if someone came in mind while you were listening, send this to them. We're better together, and the right conversation can change someone's direction. I want to invite you to my Saturday newsletter called Emotional Mastery. 5 minutes each week to sharpen your intuition and strengthen your emotional intelligence. To sign up, it's the top link in the description. Now let's keep this momentum going and check out this next episode. I'll see you in there.